Before we begin, I want to let everybody know that Mrs. Parks is not able to join us this evening, and I am going to ask Sue to do roll call attendance, please.
Alicia Gardner,
Present.
Chuck Melkey,
Here.
Carrie Germain,
Here.
Jessica Lenave, present. John Sayer,
Present.
Brian Sapanik.
All right, we have 6, and we can start. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. And next on our agenda, we have the opportunity for public comment. If we have anyone in the audience who would like to address the board related to agenda items that are on our agenda this evening, please stand, state your name, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. I wanted to give you the courtesy in case you were. Oh, no problem. Is your comment related to the agenda tonight? Okay. I'll let you look. No problem. I'm sorry?
She's going to wait till the next round.
Okay, so if you would like, I can use my president's prerogative and allow you to speak now, if that would prevent you from having to stay through the whole meeting.
Oh, I can speak now.
Okay, all right.
First, I'd like to say hello, and I'm welcome to Swartz Creek. I just moved out here in March.
Welcome.
On the corner of McLean and Ingleside, where the traffic is atrocious. Because they cannot do it on Miller Road, they have to go 30. They fly down McLean at 40 to 50 miles an hour, and maybe 30 to 40, maybe 50 is probably exaggerating, but that's what it seems like to me, because I have my 2-year-old granddaughter out there playing. I even put a little plastic person waving a flag, cautious, slow down. You have a digital readout sign on Fairchild, I think is the name there. Is it possible to get one on McLean when the parents are in a hurry to get their kids to school or home from school, and the young student drivers, inexperienced, are flying up and down that road? I spoke to some people the other day, and they said that sign is movable. Is that so?
Are you speaking about the sign?
The digital readout. You are going sign right here on the first block on Fairchild by the school.
Oh, that's a good question.
And they also have them on
Yes.
Miller Road.
Yeah. That would be movable. That would be with the Metro Police Department, for sure.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I didn't know if it was something that the school was able to switch around to keep an eye on the traffic or not. I sit in my living room and love watching the softball kids out there playing in the baseball, whatever, ball. But I've seen a cop sit up there facing Miller Road about a half a block back with his little radar gun. So one day I stopped and politely said, "Hi, have you ever turned your car around and radared the people going down McLean?" "No." Something needs to be done about that after-school traffic. If they just had a township, who wouldn't? But the traffic's just as bad here, just as scary for my grandchildren. They're not even going to school, and I can't let them play a little bit without hovering over them like a maniac, because a little 2-year-old might go to the sidewalk, and these kids and parents are flying down McLean Street extremely fast. I know they're doing more than a neighborhood speed limit. I don't know the limit because I don't have a radar gun, but I know they're speeding. I know it. And I would just like to maybe request that somehow it be monitored for a short period of time or something to get them aware of it and get them talking about it and get them to, I better slow down. That's a neighborhood. And I understand the excitement and, get out of school, let's go do this, or I gotta pick up Sue and get to home from work or to work or whatever. But it's dangerous. I moved out here because I thought it'd be safer, friendlier, and it is in a lot of ways, but that traffic seriously concerns me. The speed of the traffic. I know there's gonna be traffic. She loves to watch traffic. White truck, black car. Ooh, the buses and the
So I would just,
equipment.
I just wanted to let you know that we definitely are all on the same page, and we agree. One of the things that would be helpful is if you leave your contact info on the card, and we can reach out to you this next week, and we'll make sure that we get everybody in contact with the right people to make sure those things can happen. So we appreciate it.
Something, thank you, is better than nothing. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't know, I didn't catch your name, I'm sorry.
My name is Mary Ann McClanahan.
Thank you,
I live
Mary Ann.
right in the house on the corner of McLean and Ingalls.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Welcome to Swartz Creek.
I love it so far.
All right. Moving on, we have a consent agenda, and I do have a request to modify the agenda slightly. And
You want me to
go ahead,
detail?
go ahead.
Yes, Madam President. I was going to suggest that we move action item 11A for SCEA employment up to actually 10A prior to our closed session and make closed session 10B to give our professionals some opportunity to not have to stick around for the whole meeting.
All right, with that change, thanks, Alicia. With that change, do I have a second?
Second.
Chuck, any comments or questions? All right, okay, I would entertain a voice vote. All those in favor say aye for this change to the agenda.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, with the changes, I would also need a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Jessica and Alicia, any comments or questions? Hearing none. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
Yes.
Jessica Lenave? Yes. John Sayer?
Yes.
Carrie Germain?
Yes.
Chuck Melkey?
Yes.
Brian Sapanic?
Yes.
6 yes.
All right, thanks, everyone. Okay, going on, Mr. Meinka, you have a fair number of things to share with us this evening, I'm sure.
Sure, we do have a lot going on, and I'm going to try and keep my report as brief as possible because a lot of the work that we've been discussing is in transportation as well as some of the things with ESSER funding, and so we're going to talk about that more at length a little later. I am going to try to pull up for sake of communication, see if this shows up. So, over the course of the last couple weeks, definitely since our last board meeting, vaccinations have been authorized for children ages 5 to 11. And when those vaccination approvals were granted, school districts in consultation with the Genesee County Health Department have obviously been able to make those available. So right now, I'm going to be communicating out this week we want to try and make sure we get our families the vaccine information. The walk-ins for the vaccinations are happening right now. There's literally no appointment needed. They have plenty of supply. We're actually we talked with the health department today about even allowing them to host a clinic here. I want to stress, of course, as I've said in the past, at this time this is all voluntary, but allowing access to the people that the parents decide that they want that choice to be made, they'd have the ability to do that. But the vaccinations, both the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines are being authorized at this time. I'm sorry, the Pfizer vaccine is being authorized for children, and there are appointments available. So we're going to be sending that out later this week and allowing that opportunity, and potentially even having a clinic on site, as several other school districts have offered as well. Our student athletes have wrapped up a very successful fall season. Music, arts, the band has performed admirably. We have a lot of awesome things to report, and we're going to, now that our fall season has wrapped up, we're going to hear a report from our athletic director at our December meeting, so I'm excited to hear all of the happenings there. Big announcement that was made, I know that you all got the information, and we are going to probably want to set aside a time to thank Mrs. Corbett for her tremendous service to our students and families in this district. So obviously one of the changes that was, fairly sudden is the retirement of Ms. Corbett at the middle school as our principal. And she's, taking care of a lot of things and has a lot of plans and exciting opportunities in front of her. But I do think we would like to possibly schedule a time to bring her here and just publicly recognize her. She's not only grew up here and graduated from Swartz Creek, she spent her entire professional career serving the children and families in this community and has done so at a very, very high level. So excited for her new chapter in life, but also very excited for Mrs. Titsworth. She's serving as an interim, and also Mr. Gatlin serving as an interim assistant principal. And they're both doing a really nice job. They've jumped in both feet. And as those two kind of get things settled over there, we're going to get a better sense of what we would like to do moving throughout the year. And of course, we'll make more permanent decisions as we get towards the end of the school year. But I'm real glad that the two of them are available and doing such a great job. I also want to update the board that we had a really nice meeting out at Gaines a couple weeks ago. Had another town hall. And at that meeting, we shared some of the updated data on class size. We shared some of the updated data on the finances. Obviously, with our student numbers and our student enrollments, coupled with the increase in student funding, we had some additional information to share from our summer meetings. And we're continuing to stay on course and on track. We're going to have our next meeting November 17th. We are originally scheduled at 5:30. We were going to move that to 6 o'clock at some of the suggestion of the residents because they felt like maybe some more people might be able to attend if it was a little later. So we are going to make that adjustment. As we have said in the past, we will have Gaines brought up at our meetings so that people can be aware that that's an ongoing conversation. Encourage those that are interested to engage in the town halls and engage in the discussion at the meetings. I think as a board, we'll have to decide, you will have to decide if you want to schedule, that March meeting when and where, and you can probably be thinking about that at your organizational meeting in January. But we have shared the updated numbers with the community, and the next town hall will move from 5:30 to 6 o'clock on November 17th. We continue to address a lot of the learning loss issues that we're finding with our kids, and one of the things, just to give you a little pulse, staffing continues to be a very big stress. We have a lot of staff members who are filling in and subbing in classrooms for our teachers who are out, and this is happening at all the levels. So I know that myself and Mr. Heatherton have been sub-principals multiple times in the past week. I was actually processing a student discipline referral and doing a restorative circle with some third graders out at Deke a couple weeks ago, and then this past week as well. And I know there have been multiple times when Mr. Claren has been out at Moorish and some of the other buildings. So our principals are really doing a fantastic job manning the ship, but they are people too, and sometimes they get sick, and it's been an issue. So we've been subbing there, and they have been subbing in classrooms for teachers. Staffing levels continue to be a real challenge in getting people to work, but we are starting to see a positive trend in that we're getting some traction with our kids, and we're getting them back through that original kind of shock to the system of coming back to school with everybody together for the first time, and for some of them, the first time in a year and a half. So we're starting to see the consistent approach of helping them move through some of these social, emotional, basically routines, and then now we're really kind of starting to dig into more of the content and that. So it's going to be an ongoing process throughout the year. It's going to be a challenging year. And I talked to superintendents all over the state. I had a conversation with several principals, and their challenges, they just feel more burnt out this year than they even did last year. And I think a lot of it's about expectation. But I will say the hope is that it's getting better, and there seem to be a lot of signs to show that. So we'll talk more about that in the future. But all in all, lots of things happening, and I don't want to take anything away from Elena, but I will just say we did our first board student roundtable, of which some of you were able to attend, and I'll let her talk about the details of that, but I can tell you how impressed I was with Elena's leadership and Elena's ability to get a very good cross-section of our student population. So I appreciate her leadership and all she's doing in that arena. And with that concludes my report.
Thanks, Ben. Any questions for Ben? No?
I have a couple.
Sure, go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, and I've talked to Ben about this a little bit. I think Adrian's coming next month, and I believe myself, and I won't speak for Jessica, but maybe Jessica added on to it, that at one of our subcommittee meetings, we would like a report of all of our athletics. So kind of the number of tennis players, swimmers, and stuff, so we can kind of prioritize what we need to do with sports. And two is he was going to do something like the niche scale, although we were doing really good moving up the scale on our education, thanks to Rod and the teachers and the principals, but we wanted or at least I would like kind of a snapshot of that for the board. And other than that, that's about it for me. And at the admin office, so now that I'm thinking about it, how many people do you have that can fill in as principals? Because I know some of them have filled spots as assistant principals and principals if this becomes an issue, Ben.
Sure. So in central office, there's really 4 of us that can do that.
Okay.
So that's Mr. Claren, Mr. Bouchon. Mr. Claren is our human resources person. Mr. Bouchon is our special education director. I'll tell you, Mr. Bouchon, 2 days ago, spent the entire morning being a substitute paraprofessional because one of our children with an IEP has to have a paraprofessional, and that paraprofessional couldn't come into work. We couldn't get a sub. So Mr. Bouchon was a substitute paraprofessional. So
Right.
It's hard because obviously when he goes to do that, all of his work that normally needs to get done is put on hold until he can do that. Mr. Heatherton has spent some time in buildings doing that, and he certainly is an experienced principal. And then obviously I've been a principal of multiple levels. So, but between the 4 of us, we're subbing in those capacities if there's a need, because you have to kind of think of it as boots on the ground. We do really important work. I don't want to diminish that, but you have to make sure that the kids have leadership at the buildings. And so our kind of first priority is manning the front, making sure that there's somebody there. And the principals feel the same way, so they're stepping in when they can't get a classroom filled in many cases and subbing in classrooms to teach kids. So.
Okay, good. That's why I asked that, because you said you had to go and be at the height, or some of the schools anyway, so as long as we have plenty of staff to take care of that. And then I guess that brings up one more little thing. Do you have a current flow chart? I think we've talked about this before, but can we get a flow chart of all the employees in the district so we can see how that runs down? Most big organizations like this have a flow chart, and I know you guys have one, I just haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's a great
shortage. I would just like to comment, that's not unique to just Swartz Creek. That is pretty much globally, definitely within Michigan, and that we have other schools in the area that have actually had to close for days, weeks, whatever, because they just don't have enough staff available. So kudos to our staff for stepping in, but I just wanted to highlight that that's not just a Swartz Creek uniqueness.
Yeah, I look at this time as an opportunity because never before in my life have I remembered, there are large districts across the country. I got an article today about a large district, not to be named, that is literally taking multiple classes of kids and putting them in a gymnasium or putting them in an auditorium because they don't have enough teachers. And so they're trying to have maybe 200 or 300 kids with an adult that's basically just to talk at them. You want to talk about eroding the quality of what we do. I mean, that's the opposite direction of where we want to go. And so I think the challenge for us is to lead well during one of the most challenging times in our history as a country, not just in education, and how to kind of emerge from this and be the best we can be for our children. And so I think there's a unique opportunity. You can look to the challenge, but there's also a lot of possibilities. And so we just have to be creative and think a little differently. But it is very concerning in terms of the number of people that are not there to replace, the baby boomer generation, as well as the people who, have not yet come back from, being off in the pandemic. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, everyone, for your questions. All right, moving on. We have a report from Elena Cook, our student board representative.
Hello. So this year, we have started something every month where we'll just have a monthly town hall for students. They can come and just share any concerns that they may have. This month, we were unable to have one for a couple different reasons, and I'm unsure about whether or not we'll be able to have one next month, but definitely in January, we will start those back up. Our middle school and high school has their conferences this week. In fact, our high school conferences are going on right now. So as a result of that, grades 6 through 12 does not have school on Friday. On Monday, our high school student council was able to attend a leadership conference in Frankenmuth, where they learned basic life skills such as teamwork, responsibility, and leadership. Our football team finished their season making it to the playoffs. However, they did lose in the first few rounds. Our Powder Puff volleyball game will be on Friday at 5, so good luck to all of our participants in that. One topic of concern that has been brought up, I'm unsure about whether or not they were able to bring it up last week at our meeting, but it is our parking lot. We know that it is getting completely redone next summer. However, our students are actually worried about how dark it can be in the mornings and how dangerous it can actually be. We know that there are lights out there. However, we spend most of our time judging based off of headlights, which can get really dangerous when we have student drivers who can be a little irresponsible and are whipping in really fast. We've also had a series of break-ins and even a couple broken taillights because of vandalism. So I'm not sure what can be done about that, but I thought I'd bring it to your attention. This year is slowly starting to return back to normal with things such as our senior candle walk, our freshman Halloween party, our Dragon Spectacular, our choir programs, being able to participate in different events. In fact, our madrigals next week will be able to participate in a performance of the Rudder Requiem with several other different districts, so that's pretty exciting. And 12 Angry Jurors, which is our fall production, which opens next Friday at 7:30. Totally did not just promote my own show. For our student spotlight this month, Carter Pfeiffer, who's our high school soccer player, was recognized as all conference, all district, all region, and all state honorable mention this season. And then other awards from our fall sports are still being accumulated. Like Mr. Mankus said, last week we were able to have our first student and board member roundtable discussion. It was a lot of fun and a lot of great discussion was held. I think everyone who's able to attend and those who are not able to attend but would like to go to the next one, because there will be a next one, I will be more than willing to work around your schedule if you would like to attend. I was actually pleasantly surprised by how well this went. I had several students come up and request to be a part of this again, and even more come up and express how much they enjoyed it and how thankful they were to be invited. Some just basic feedback that we did receive from that. Our students really enjoyed the fact that they were small groups, so they were able to be more personal, and that the rotation allowed for more discussion with more board members. They did ask that we have more time because they were not able to talk about everything that they wanted to talk about. They really enjoyed the mix and the diversity that was a part of the groups. They were not just staying with a bunch of honor roll students. They were staying with a big group. And I believe that is it. Any questions?
I'd just like to comment, if I may. So Elena, I just wanted to let you know, and if you can pass on, especially to the students that participated, first of all, a big thank you. And thank you for organizing. But I mentioned in conversation with Ben, we have an obligation, those of us that participated, to compile our information that we did receive. And I wanted to let you know, to let them know, we are going to discuss those things and just let them know that there's going to be a plan for some follow-up of some sort. And then when we do meet again, hopefully we can address some of those overarching concerns that crossed amongst all of us that received feedback. So that was one of the large concerns that we got, was that they have a voice, but they don't always necessarily feel like they get that return on their concerns. So I challenge those that participated to document or put together a concise list of hot topics or commonalities in some of the groups on what you were hearing over and over, and if we can share those with Ben, so then we can decide how we facilitate some of those further discussions.
Yeah, I would just concur that if you have notes that you would like the other board members to see, if you'd send them to me, I can put them into a document and disperse them to the other board members, so those that weren't able to attend can have that information as well.
Thanks, Alicia, and thanks, Ben. And I also want to thank you on behalf of the board, Elena. You did an amazing job organizing that. It was flawless, and just having the opportunity to speak to all of those different students from all different grade levels. I think we had a student who's been with the district for maybe a few weeks. So it was really interesting to hear their introductory perspective of the district, and to have just a nice variety of conversations and to really hear what's going on, but what's really important, and some of the passion that the students have. So thank you to you for facilitating it, and we look forward to other opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 7 in your packet, you have informational items. You have the employment of non-certified staff that you can review. Going on to the board subcommittee reports. Brian, let's start with the policy committee.
Okay, thank you. We had our policy committee meeting yesterday we started actually at 7:09. We ended at 7:58 a.m. Those in attendance: Rod Heatherton, Brian Sapanik, Carrie Germain, Jessica Lene, and Alicia Gardner. Our focus yesterday was on board minutes. We wanted to look at making them more efficient. So we discussed, reviewed, and revised board minute policy number 2501G. And from a separate supplement we had, and it was Act 267 of 1976, the minutes, this is the quote, minutes are required to contain, and this is the 4 elements that have to be in the minutes. I'll read those. A statement of the time, date, and place of the meeting, members present as well as absent, a record of, of any decisions made at the meeting, and a record of all roll call votes, and an explanation for the purposes if the meeting is a closed session. We reviewed and discussed several different published minutes from different school districts in the county: Swartz Creek, Flushing, Linden, Davison, Fenton, and Carmen Ainsworth. We were actually kind of picking and choosing what we really liked about these different published minutes. We put those together. I think you'll find in our minutes as of today, some of those recommendations are in our minutes, and you can see that. I think it's a lot easier to read. Thank you, Jessica. But we highlighted, we underlined, and we used bullet points. And we took out a lot of the jargon that was not necessary. We're already video recorded, video and audio recorded. If anybody needs to go back to get a true copy of what happened, they can always, it's readily accessible, the videos, and they can actually get really good communication, understanding of what happened at the meeting. So we discussed reducing and simplifying the board minutes, meeting minutes, redundant language, paring down wording, focused on concise, factual, efficient grammar, and implementing emboldened, organized headings and bullet points. We decided to keep the two public meeting invites on the board agenda, one at the beginning and one at the near the end. Pardon me? Yeah, I'm sorry, I should have said public comment. It says meetings. Recognizing board minutes are, like I said just a minute ago, are audio, video recorded, stored, and easily retrievable. There was no public comment, and we were adjourned at 7:58. Any questions? Oh, one other thing. This other document that's in there, this is mainly for the people on policy, because these are policies that needed to be re-looked at, given a second look. And so far, our meetings into the future, these are some of the policies that we really need to look at, and I'd like you to look at them and give me an idea of where your priority is at our next policy meeting. Any questions?
Any questions for Brian? Sue, we want to thank you as well for
Yes.
taking our recommendations for the minutes changes, and hopefully this will make your life a little bit easier. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
And Carrie, in discussing our overall meeting minutes, I do think it's pertinent to just advise that we kind of employ those same measures for our individual subcommittee minutes as well as needed. How Brian outlined his, I think, is perfect and not too detailed, so it hits on all the major bullet points as well.
Thank you. All right. With that, we will move on to the academic achievement meeting, which was also held on Tuesday morning. There was mainly two things on the agenda: Kickboard, which is the staff-driven behavior feedback tracking system that's being put in place,
yet available, which is, through the remainder of the year totals approximately $1 million for restricted federal funds. We currently have enough cash to handle not having those grant monies forwarded to us yet. Our check register was reviewed with no issues, bids and quotes. The athletic department is replacing the high jump mats for approximately $7,000, and they're in the process of figuring out where we're going to store them long term. MPC is doing work upgrading the old press box for approximately $9,000, allowing the opposing team to utilize that and be out of our press box area. And bus sale and purchase recommendations, there's a recommendation that we sell bus 97 and 98 because they have significant rust and high mileage. We will be coming for a vote and a recommendation for the December 1st meeting on that, and additionally to purchase one bus for the 22-23 school year. That purchase will not affect our 21-22 school year budget, as we'll take possession after July 1st. I will back up that the two buses that we'd like to sell will be listed on GovDeals auction site with a minimum bid of $5,500 each. We had an update on our sinking fund budget. We reviewed that. Our last cage payment will be this December, totaling $177,774.60. Just said that wrong. And so in future meetings, we will be discussing what to do with that additional sinking fund dollars, what the priorities are to shift to now. There were no public comments. In the committee comments, we discussed briefly what is happening with the leftover items at Mary Crapo. We're still trying to figure out if anything will be able to be donated or what is still salvageable. Most of the salvageable items were sold at auction, and the district's already received that money. We had discussion regarding the copy machines in the district, and there's further research and analysis being done on that. The siren freezer is still delayed indefinitely, and we have added 4 cooks, one each at Morris, Elms, and Siren. Cook assistants, let me verify that, or clarify. A cook assistants to help, and also we briefly discussed ESSER 3 funding. The stakeholder surveys will be developed and going out to students and families. The grant requests that we submit will have to be tied to the survey answers. Our next meeting will be November 29th at 2 p.m., and we adjourned at 2:59 p.m.
Any questions for Jessica? All right, let's move on to building and site. Thanks, Jessica. Building and site, Chuck?
Jessica, maintenance supervisor, RC, Rod, and Ben were there. The first update was the ongoing projects. Jessica spoke on some of those already. One was the dragon float. The district would like to store the float off-site, so Ben's looking for people that may want to store it in a barn somewhere because we need the space for other things. Real property in Mary Crapo, this will be put out to the trash, which is not sold off. Basically, none of it's really usable according to RC. The walk-in cooler, Jessica went over, everything's done on that except the cooler is still in transit or being built. The pack roof and the high school, all these projects are completed with the exception of a little bit of brickwork on the pack center, and RC is doing the final inspection before payment goes out. New project update, the cage needs new water heaters for the locker rooms, and some tile needs to be replaced where there's carpeting. This is not a priority, but Ben would like it addressed soon. We discussed about what are we going to do with the cage as far as renting it out in the future. And then the admin building needs some heating work done in several of the outer wings and offices. And then the biggest item we talked about at the committee was a transportation update. Lengthy conversation. The district needs 16 drivers with some consolidations. It can be done with 14 realistically, but we only have 11 on the average. So there'll be many modifications in the immediate future. And there was a lot of proposals and ideas to help alleviate some of these issues. I did not put them in here because I believe Ben was going to give us a rundown on, he came up with 4 scenarios, an A, B, C, D scenario, or maybe it was 8, yeah, was it four plans, three, A, B, C. So if we lose any more bus drivers, or if we have to rearrange our bus drivers, he's gonna have to make some drastic changes to the way that the busing is done for our children and students. And we were finished at 4:41 p.m. Although we only had these three items, and then our next meeting will be November 29th at 3 p.m. So with that being said, I don't know if you guys want to talk about the buses or not now, or if you got that on another item.
Everything you said is great. I do have it on the agenda for, so building and site sought first, and then
Any questions for Chuck? Okay. Moving on to board discussion items, beginning with our food service update.
yes, I would like to ask Mr. Tony Delgado to approach the podium. And for those of you that do not know, earlier this summer, we had a changeover in our Chartwell's food service director. And so Mr. Tony Delgado is our food service director, and we thought, with all of the comments that we've been getting from students, as well as questions that you might hear in social media, we thought it would be a perfect opportunity for Tony, who's doing a really nice job managing a very challenging situation, to come and share an update on food service with the board and allow you to ask questions. So Tony, welcome.
Well, thank you. So Tony Delgado started the end of April. So just a little bit about me, just to give you a little bit of a rundown. Born in Flint, McLaren Hospital, grew up in Civic and Mott Park area, graduated from Davis High School. Went to U of M Flint, got a bachelor's in business administration with a focus in marketing, and I have primarily high volume restaurants, but a lot of managerial background. So starting back in April, the immediate challenges that I had was dealing with staff shortages, just like everybody else, and then just having to shift around and get coverage in the kitchens. Susie, my assistant Susie, has helped out a lot with that, but I've been working in kitchens, helping out at the middle school, out in Deke specifically, but just trying to get everything shifted so we can just keep on moving. We've had a lot of difficulty with creating new menus with constant changes and guidelines. The USDA, the Summer Food Service Program, the National School Lunch Program, and the Seamless Summer Options all have different variations on what you can give the kids and the different levels of foods that you give to them. So having to adjust and get used to different programs and what the different changes are when we're building the menus. A lot of pre-packaging, which adds a lot of time and labor onto it. And then we're starting to transition over, but the problem that we have is that the items that we would use to get away from the pre-packaging are like the school trays, which are part of the distribution issues that we keep on getting backed up. So I'm trying different vendors, different items that we could possibly get to try to help out with that. But we're still struggling to find something consistent to go with it, but still working towards it. And then just right when we got started and had to move out to the cage due to the construction at the high school, and then now we're back over there, just getting settled in and getting everybody situated. And so definitely getting there. So the cage field house summer distribution, that was one of the things that we set up right off the bat. Set up and license a cage as a new food service distribution location. We provided meals at the Peace Park mobile location out in Gaines. We set up temporary refrigeration and freezer, both at the cage. So in total, about 47,000 meals served between the two locations. And then if you include summer school, about 59,000. And then even right now, we're still doing distribution to the virtual students. So as we told you, there's just nationwide supply chain difficulties all around. It's not just Michigan, it is just nationwide. Every one of our vendors are experiencing issues with staffing and supplies. There's shortages in factories. They reeled back after COVID hit when they didn't have as much demand, and now the demand is doubling up on everything, and they're having troubles getting back up to speed with everything. All right, go ahead and play. This is just a little bit of a rundown of what's going on.
As in many sectors of our economy, K-12 school nutrition programs have been greatly disrupted since March 2020. As the pandemic unfolded and meal participation dropped with schools closed, demand for products decreased. This resulted in fewer orders from schools to distributors and manufacturers. Consequently, manufacturers had to cut personnel and reduce or eliminate items to streamline inventory and manage operational expenses. Now, with the economy reopened and all at once, demand for products, particularly in the food service segment, is outpacing supply. So it should not come as a surprise that cafeterias all over the country look quite different these days. From socially distanced tables, outdoor eating areas, and mass staff, things are just not the same. Shortages and supply chain issues have brought great challenges at all points of the chain, from raw materials and manufacturing to packaging and transporting. In addition to food, this shortage affects the paper products used to serve meals, and even the trays that are a mainstay in every cafeteria, among other items. At the same time, many schools are affected by staffing issues, with workers retiring or leaving the profession. Yet, despite these challenges, school nutrition teams are working tirelessly behind the scenes to secure the necessary items needed to provide students with a healthy and balanced meal. They continue to order as early as possible and are adjusting menus to the best of their ability with alternative items in place of those they are unable to source. This means that you may see more frequent changes on the menu, so be sure to check your school's website often. With so many shifts, one thing remains the same: the commitment of school nutrition professionals to the children they feed. All over the country, school nutrition teams continue to be innovative and creative in their solutions to navigating these challenges, to ensuring students have access to healthy school meals. As essential employees, they have worked non-stop since the start of the pandemic under very difficult circumstances, so they appreciate your understanding, support, and kindness.
So, like they mentioned with the paper products, it's not just a food shortage, and it's something that it adds an added level of difficulty for our staff. Basically trying to figure out on the fly what we can do. Me picking up and running food from building to building to make sure that everybody's got coverage. Trying to find different vendors to supply the things that we just need on a day-to-day basis. So those are just some of the things. And then so this is just an example of one day of orders that we did. And each one of those emails letting us know of unavailable items, just multiple things in each one of those emails. Every time we place an order, we have to substitute out just a ridiculous amount of items that just are completely out of stock. The Michigan Department of Education, they're fully aware of it, and they understand that modifications are going to be made. Some things are going to throw off the meal patterns and everything. As long as we stay good with our production records, we're covered as far as that. But the main thing is trying to find things that the kids want to. Instead of just saying, oh, well, this is what we have, we also want to give them meals that they want to enjoy. So with nutrition, it seems like, we can't just throw a bunch of food at the kids and just call it good. We have to stick with the meal patterns. So for like lunch, with high school kids, they get a lot more, and especially with the seamless summer option, a lot more fruits and vegetables that have to be offered to them. And they do have the choice of taking it, but we have to offer the right amount. And we have to have the right mix of vegetables. We have not just colors, but legumes, and we have to have a good variety of it. Then one of the biggest issues with just where kids call quality, they don't necessarily like whole grains. So we have to try to find a balance between whole grains and things like I tried a roll up with peanut butter and fruits and thought that they would like it, but the wrap wasn't exactly what they're looking for. So take it back and back to the drawing board, and we have to try out different things with them, find out what's good, what isn't. But there's also a restriction with calories, and that's one of the biggest things that people don't understand is, like, if the kids are hungry, yes, we can feed them, we can give them what they want, but we also have to stay within a certain amount of calories too, because we don't want to overfeed them. Granted, they can get seconds, but with the reimbursable meals, we have to stick it within the guidelines. Go ahead. So with our kitchens, they are definitely working their butts off lately. They're trying their best, and it's not a glorified job. So when they're in it for the kids. They're in it to make sure that everybody's happy, everybody's healthy. those are just examples of what we have. And at the very end, we have a fun lunch, but it's missing one important thing, the fruits and vegetables. And that's one of the things that we have to force on the kids, like make sure that they're getting their fruits and vegetables, because a lot of them just want to grab that pizza and make a run for the door. Then we have to pull some goal line defense to get them right back to it and make sure that they're getting the components that they have to get for a full meal. So that's, and some are very understanding and some not so much, but that's just the path that we have to walk. So with that in mind too, we're also trying to make some upgrades to the kitchens, just the all-around look to them as well. Like the middle school, we're working on replacing the entire serving lines. We've got a plan of redecorating all around it, placing new menus, getting new signage, just making it a lot more inviting and not the feeling of institutional. High school, we're trying to open up the coffee bar that I know was a plan in the past, but then got a little bit delayed. So we have been moving forward with that. We've got to work on staffing because I don't want to take people away from the kitchen where they absolutely need them to go out there, but we are definitely working on getting that going. And the same with the high school. Inside the actual serving area, it's nice, it's clean, but it's bland too. There's not a lot of just something to where it doesn't just feel like it's, just an institution or, a prison where you're walking through. They want to feel comfortable. We want them to enjoy coming through, to see the food, to feel comfortable when they're coming through the line and not just one by one just leading through so they can get it done with. So that's ultimately what the goal is, and you'll see a lot of little things here and there, just basic presentation items, just to make it feel like it's inviting. So, all right. If anybody has any questions, more than happy.
I have one, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So I know, and I'm sure you do as well, a lot of food does go to waste, especially those fruits and vegetables, because kids just don't want to eat them. They take them because they have to, and then they throw them out right away.
Yeah.
Do we have, at either the middle school, high school, or elementaries, do we have like an area where maybe those kids that, instead of just throwing them straight out in the trash, they could put those fruits and vegetables down so that we could either save them or give them to another kid who might want them? So if I was to go through the line, grab an apple, grab a bag of carrots, but I only wanted that pizza, but I was forced to take those, instead of just throwing them out, I could put them on this area and then say, Chuck, he wanted more, so he comes through while he grabs that apple and those carrots and he goes ahead and eats them. Do we have any areas like that?
Yeah, I know more, at least for the schools I've seen where they have an area where they drop them down. The problem is not a lot of kids come and pick them up, so there is a lot that goes to waste. The cooks before, they were trying to bring it back and reutilize items that we had. But unfortunately with that, that puts us in a conflict with the reimbursement, because we are getting reimbursed for the meals that we give out. So then if we then take the items that have been reimbursed on, take those items back, put them back into production, now we're double dipping, and we don't want to do that. Because then when we go to get our reimbursement, then they could say, well, you were doing this or this, and we can pull back. Like, that was one of the big problems with milk. A lot of kids didn't want milk, and we were doing just a straight serve meal where we say, this is the meal that we were serving. You have an option between A and B, but everything else is decided for you. It doesn't give them a lot of choice, and they were trying to decline the milk. Well, if they don't take the milk, or if they give back the milk and we put it back, then again, that's where we could start losing the money that we're getting for that. But we were talking about just things like pizzas at the high school. If they have any left over, what can we do to get them to the kids? And that's absolutely something that I want to do too. And I know I've talked with Ben about setting up an advisory board at the middle school and the high school. So I've got 6 students specific at the middle school that we're looking at bringing on for that. And I've got 1 so far at the high school, and I'm waiting on some information on more, just so I can get an idea of what we could do to get that to them, things that we could change, things that we could do better, just to get some communication from the ones that are actually going through on a daily basis too.
John, I can also tell you in Morrish, surprisingly, broccoli's not a very fan favorite in my building.
I know.
And so we do have an aide that collects a bunch of the broccoli and gives it to a teacher who has a rescue farm, and she feeds the broccoli to the chickens. So we do try to save in that way too.
Very good, thank you.
Well, and ultimately, I want to make modifications to the menu to where we can get things that kids are more interested in too, because I don't want to throw things away. I'd rather them eat them than have to set it on a table too. So I'm going to keep on keep on, and that's going to help with the advisory board too, because then I can get a better idea. I mean, granted, there's, with thousands of kids in the district being fed every day, it's impossible to make every single kid happy. But if we can make the vast majority of them, then I'd call that a win.
Go ahead, Brian.
I grew up in a family of 7, and I hated waste. My family hated waste. You didn't waste. So all these apples and carrots and other things that I've heard, that kids don't like, when they're recycled or when they're put out for other kids, what is the health concern with that? Or is everything wrapped to where there's no problem?
Majority. There's no, necessarily not a health concern. I mean, granted, if something sits there for too long, then temperature-wise, it could eventually, but it's not necessarily a health concern. The biggest, like, so, I mean, if we want to redistribute to the kids, like if they want to have a table or like a section where it goes to everybody, that's entirely fine. It's making sure that everybody, like if there's items that have to be held cold, they can't stay there all day either because we don't want kids to get sick. But I'm 100% on board. I don't want wasted food either. Like, I mean, granted, we get the money from it, like we get the reimbursements for it regardless, but it just breaks my soul to see that much food not being eaten, or, you know, to find a bag of carrots in the hallway because some kid just didn't necessarily want it but felt like he had to take it.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I had a conversation about this, and it was suggested that I bring this up to you, and I'm going to give a nudge to Travis in the back may need to listen in because it's going to be a question for IT as well. You say there's a lot of waste, and we know that. As well, my understanding is it's kind of a shot in the dark as to like quantity that you're going to need to have. We really don't have, you know, a specific pulse on how many kids are going to have pizza one day, and if we make a whole bunch of pizzas and all of a sudden everybody's pizzaed out and didn't eat those that day. So, you know, we're hearing you say there's obviously supply issues, but if we're throwing away food or wasting food, yet we're getting feedback that there are some kids that say they go to lunch and there isn't anything available. Maybe not necessarily that nothing's available, what they want isn't available.
Correct.
So I actually have my own personal account of sitting in a hospital bed, and I literally had to call every single meal and order what I wanted. We had a set meal or set menu, several different options. I mean, I could have a plethora for weeks on end, mixing and matching.
Yeah.
Do we have anything in our system? I'm not really trying to put you on the spot. I'm assuming we don't, but if we do, or can we consider some kind of like pre-ordering system where, I mean, I remember for my own kids, even at childcare, I used to have to tell them a week ahead, these are the meals I want for my child so that they could order accordingly.
Yeah.
If that was something that we could possibly put in place, and especially if nothing else from the high school level, we are trying to encourage these children, or still children, to be young adults and to start to be kind of self-motivated. If we put that on them, I mean, they're all pretty app savvy and all that kind of stuff. I mean, can always be that option that this is your backup plan. But if they're able to pre-order and kind of guarantee that that's going to be available, even if we can attach that to what lunch then too, because I know, you know, for the early bird gets the worm. So if you got early lunch, everything's available. But if you're the last kid, not everything that you want's necessarily there. So.
Well, and we try to alleviate that too, because the cooks do pay attention to the things that are moving quickly. And like specifically at the high school, we don't want the Sea lunch to miss out on something because it was very popular. So if at the end of the first lunch we have to cut short a little bit, we want to try to spread it out, or we've had it to where we don't allow seconds because it's just flying out, and we didn't have enough supply to keep it going all the way through. But I mean, we still have we still have a minimum of 3 other entrees. And again, like where you said the kids were saying there wasn't anything left. Again, that's a preference thing. There wasn't anything left that they specifically wanted, but there's always food there. And as far as the pre-ordering thing, at the elementary levels, that's actually what we do. All the classrooms submit in what the kids want. They get A option or B option. They get that to the cafeterias, and then they start prepping the food based on that. So actually at the elementary level, there's very little waste. Now at the high school and middle school, it makes it more difficult because you have so many different options for them to choose, because we want them to feel like, you know, they're not just like kind of corralled into one option or either this or this. We want to give them some options so they kind of have a little bit more control. There is going to be some waste because it's not perfect. And just like the elementaries, there's waste just because a kid tells you one thing, they come up to the line and they're like, oh, I meant B. And then what am I going to be like? Nope, sorry. No, we're gonna make the kid happy and we'll make do. And we might have a little bit of waste from the A option because he chose B, but that's not the standard though. So
I can completely understand on a daily basis, but even I don't know how frequently you have to place your orders either. But if you had some kind of input to judge that pizza's really going to be popular next Tuesday, to be able to order accordingly or whatever, and then it's putting some responsibility and ownership back on the students as well.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm open to any kind of input with that because, I mean, whatever can make the job easier for the kitchen staff is even better. I mean, granted, they're doing a great job by just paying attention. Like, they pay attention to the preference of the students, and they start weighting their prepped items based on what they know. Like, if we have sweet and sour chicken, it is going to fly out. So they start prepping less pizzas because they know that a lot more kids are going to shift over that way. So they, on a daily basis, they are trying to manage the loss, but just the service style at the high school and middle school level, it's impossible to alleviate all the loss, but we can definitely manage it. And that's what they've been doing a fairly good job of it. But there's always, like, when we change up the pizza crust, we have to assume that, or we can't predict that every kid is going to, like, have a problem with the pizza crust, but we can kind of. But there may be days where if we had to switch to a different one, it's not going to be as popular, so we do less of it. So there might be a little bit more waste on those days, but we're definitely trying our hardest to get away from that.
I think my suggestions are really leaning more towards that. My kid was one of them. Ate the exact same thing every single day. I can tell you for 4 years straight, because I had to put money into the account and see what he ate every single day. Clockwork. Not healthy, by the way, but anyway, what he ate every day was what he ate. But if he was in the last lunch and that wasn't available, he literally would just come home and eat it instead. And that's where, I mean, obviously you're not going to cater to one child, but across the board, I do know we get that feedback, like that it's not available towards the end, that if there was a way to, I mean, I think your student advisory boards is a fantastic idea, but if there's anywhere where we can get to, I don't know, it's kind of putting it on the parents, the students, it's, early bird does get the worm. I mean, even if you go to Outback, if they're out of steak by the end of the, you didn't get there till 9 o'clock and the kitchen closes in an hour, you're not going to get a steak.
Well, and sometimes, like, we could order, like, X amount of this, but we only get, like, half that amount, too. So sometimes it's just dependent on what we get, too. So it's on the menu, so we're going to serve it, and so then we start prepping up on the other items to kind of subsidize for that. But it's difficult right now because, like, even like Tyson, we were having trouble just getting chicken products in. So we were having to try to modify menus just to, like, in different schools, we switch over to burgers. We had to switch to a different burger patty because we couldn't get the traditional burger patty. But we're going to keep on doing it because if we have any issues, we're not going to just say, okay, well, we ran out. No.
And even if it was like day of and you only have 50 and kids order and it's no longer available to even option, I don't know, just some kind of choice options, or using our fantastic IT people that have, all kinds of fun things that they could probably whip together to make it have a little bit more student choice. Maybe?
Hey, whatever.
Just a suggestion.
I want to lighten the load on my cooks, so whatever I can do to help them, I'm on board with that.
Awesome.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Number one, thank you, because to all the staff, as you said, it's not a glorious job in part, and it is hard work. So to you and all the staff, thank you. Thank you for taking care of the kids and trying to get them something that they'll eat. And you were talking about that. I have some questions like, how do you said you're trying to get the kids what they want.
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing it? Because the advisory panel, have those actually met yet? And
Not yet.
Testing the food?
That we're going to. That's the idea. One, like, for me, it's going to be a two-way process, or like a two-way situation. Like, I'm going to give them the information that they don't have, because they don't understand why we ran out of chicken nuggets. They don't understand why the pizza crust is different. And it's tough to get the same information to every single set of students. So if I've got some connections with the students, at least I can start spreading some information from them to them, and hopefully they can spread that out as well. And that it's not just us in poor planning or not caring about what they want. It's that sometimes we don't get enough and we have to try to make do. But in the same sense, getting feedback from them, say, hey, you know, we were thinking about trying out something new here. What do you think? Or just ripping apart my menu. I mean, if they want to completely rip it apart and tell me everything that's good, bad, and ugly, then I'm entirely open to that because honestly, they're the end game.
Do you know when you'll have those panels together, and will that be middle school, high school, or all through all the schools?
Just middle school, high school for now, and then
Okay.
see where it goes from there. The smallest ones, I tend to lean on the teachers and their information, the cooks, and just the one. I mean, they see the kids and they talk to them as they pass through too, and they get a lot of feedback from them too. So I think at the elementary level, we've done fairly well in getting the information. I think if we do an entire board, I think at least at the middle school and high school level, they have we'll have the maturity level of them taking it seriously or actually like trying to contribute and make things better.
Gotcha. And then, I don't know, does it, because there is some inconsistency, because like this week you can get this crust or this quality of chicken, and this week you don't.
Yeah.
And you try to make it work. Is there any opportunity to do it, like potentially a simple survey for the students of what was on the menu today? Did it, you know, rank it 1 to 5? How, you know, did you do well, did you not? So there's a way for even the larger student population to say, hey, this was amazing today, or yeah, you know, today kind of missed
Yeah.
the mark, whatever. But for that interaction, so I guess I'm thinking more so the middle school and the high school, so the students, you know,
Honestly,
feel like what their comments are maybe are being heard. And I know you got a lot going on. There are a lot of
Oh, no,
fires
that's
you're
fine.
putting out with. You know, I'm just saying, with the staffing issue and trying to just make do with what is coming in, I get it, you know, and just thinking about it as well from the student roundtable that we talked about, and that, you know, I know the students appreciate us listening. They also want to know that they're being heard.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I've had at least, well, I've had 2 comments come through. Just Mr. Kitchen at the high school, he's passed on some information to me, so I've met specifically with kids because, I mean, like I said, they have a say as well. It's not just trying to make their parents happy, I'm trying to make them happy. So I sat down for each one of them for about an hour just listening to what they had to say, any kind of input, and kind of explaining the difficulties that we're having. Like with the survey thing right now, I don't think it necessarily benefit just yet until the distribution kind of flattens out. Because I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver with something that I don't have control over. And so we're going to keep on changing menus if we have to, just to kind of keep the kids fed. But if I say, hey, do you like that? Do you want more of it? Now I can't get more of it. Now I've kind of set a precedence for them that I can't keep up with. So, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one more question.
Yeah.
It's, to the waste part, and if I may, to what Mrs. Lashbrook mentioned, is there any opportunity, and does it affect our funding for some of that food that we can't use afterwards to be able to build some partnerships maybe, or relationships with some of our local farms or families that have chickens or pigs or whatever else, where it's not just completely going to waste, but it can benefit?
Can I add on to that as well?
Yeah.
I know we're potentially bringing in an FFA or 4-H program. Maybe we could work with them. We could start like a compost pile or something with them, so they get that firsthand experience with that sort of thing. Would that
Absolutely.
be possible?
I think the main thing is just like figuring out how to transport, how to store, obviously, because we don't want like food just sitting around waiting for somebody to come pick it up. But absolutely. I mean, I thought, like, at one point I thought about if we could donate or something like that, but then there's liabilities that go with that for already prepared food. We don't know what happens with it after that, but if it's going to farm animals or compost or something like that, absolutely. And if the children themselves want to take the excess food that's in there, absolutely as well. Like, I'd rather, like, if a kid's in need and they're more, if they want to take the droppings or like whatever the other kids are just leaving behind, I'm 100% on board with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Tony. I did get a question from the students when we met with them at 2 tables.
Yeah.
Are there gluten-free, vegan, and vegetarian options? And if so, how would they know that they exist?
If you look on NutriSlice, if you go to the food service portion of the Swartz website, it'll go to the menu, and in NutriSlice, it'll give you all the nutritional values of everything, and it'll let you know any kind of allergens, anything like that. So granted, we try to stay away from that, but like any parents that have problems with like specific allergies or things like that, we can definitely accommodate. And if there's individuals that are looking for like specifically modified menus, if it is an allergen, we just have to get a dietary need things filled out so that we have it on file, because otherwise we are making modifications to a child's meal pattern without documentation that there's a necessity for it. But anything like meat substitutes or things, we can definitely work with that as well. I don't have anything that I can think of right off the bat. I mean, we do have salads, and we can make, change those up if somebody wanted something. But I don't think we have any meat substitutes as of yet. But I can definitely look into it and see what the options are.
I as well received those same comments. I actually was going to follow up with Tony after this. And I think that's part of it, is if we do have those options, they don't know that they're available or how to identify those. And then if they're, changing or anything, it may be a bean burger one day and you think it's the same one, but if your supply is constantly changing. So somehow to have those just identified, kind of no different than a grocery store with some kind of identification.
And I want to find, like, with specific schools, like some of the elementaries, they do have needs like that where we've gone out and we have to, like, I'll go to the grocery store and just search and try to find things that will accommodate like specific allergies, because there's a handful of them out there that have very, very specific needs when it comes to their dietary. But the majority of things that we buy too are in bulk, so I'd have to find something that would be in enough, like that when we talk about waste, I don't want to buy like a whole bunch of these and not be able to actually distribute them and then just sit on them but in the same sense, I don't want to be insensitive to the needs of kids that need something different too. So I will definitely look into it and see what the options are, because I'm sure that we're not the only school district that has had that. So, and that's one of the benefits of Chartwell's, is we have a group of schools and districts that have a lot of experience and a lot of information that I can tap into.
Thank you.
So Tony, one last question, actually. What can we do as a board to help you? And what can the community do to help you? I know that you were very generous in posting on social media some of the updates about the challenges with supply chain and transportation. And are there things that the community can do within the confines of the rules? And is it possible, you mentioned staffing was a challenge as well.
Yeah.
Is it possible for community members with the appropriate background checks or whatever it would take, and this might be a Ben question too, to volunteer their time occasionally to help you out? And I don't know if that would alleviate your issue or if it would just be a bigger problem because you have to train people. And then
I don't think volunteer would necessarily help. I mean, and I don't know if we could, just because in cooking there's liability with heat and like using knives and things. You don't necessarily want that. But if they can spread the word, and I mean, I've already actually, that post helped me get one woman that I hired the other day. So it is just, if they want to help, the biggest thing is just getting the information out that not just us, but like the entire district, like, bus drivers, teachers, everybody, like we're all in need. So if they want to help, then get the word out to people that could possibly be in need of a job, that or would be interested.
Okay.
And that's the biggest thing that I'm looking for. Everybody's got the same problems right now. So there's nothing special about food service. I mean, like RC and the bus drivers, I mean, they're in a tough spot, we're in a tough spot, and everybody's doing their very best to keep up with it, and just try to make sure that we're taking care of the kids. So, I mean, it's going to get better. It's just making sure that we manage the impact right now.
And we do appreciate all that you're doing.
Absolutely. My
So
pleasure.
thank you for being here tonight. It's been a pleasure to meet you. We look forward to hearing updates. And we know that you're doing the best that you can with what you have, and our students are lucky to have you as well.
Well, and if anybody has any, like if you guys come across any comments, concerns, or anything, the biggest thing that I'm trying to do is get people to contact me directly. Because there's a lot of like telephone game where one thing gets miscommunicated, and I just want to jump ahead of that. And that's why I got into social media, because if I can get ahead of everything and provide information and contact information for me so I can have those conversations, that's going to create a lot better situation for everybody involved.
Can I ask one quick question real quick? I'm sorry, this will be fast, I promise.
Okay.
On the lines of allergies, and you mentioned the peanut butter fun lunch, we have so many students that are severely allergic to peanuts that when having, even though it is prepackaged and it's in its own little thing, the student was to eat that wrap and then they have some oils left on their hands and then they touch a doorknob, it could actually be really dangerous and even life-threatening for some of our students. Is there any way we could isolate that in any way or even change it out somehow? Because I know that I have a friend who is severely allergic, and at his table, every kid around him was eating peanut butter, and it just made me nervous watching that, knowing that if he was to touch something, he could potentially get really sick.
Well, I know with the majority of, like with the schools, we have to have on file that there is an allergy too. And they, like if there's one specific, like LDLC, they have a kid that has a very severe one, and so we switched over to Sun Butter there. But the problem is like the peanut butter substitutes are not the favorites. So we've tried that, and we had to reel that right back because that did not favor so well. So I definitely, like, I'm open to suggestions with that. I like the peanut butter jelly fun lunches, they're packaged in themselves, and then they're also packaged in another container with everything, so to try to minimize any kind of cross-contamination. But I mean, if there's a bigger concern than that, then I can look into it. But I don't, that's actually one of the more popular things, and I don't necessarily want to take it away without trying to find an alternative.
And like, we completely understand that it is prepackaged. However, what some of our students are worried about is the after effects once it has been opened and exposed.
Okay.
How it could potentially.
Can I actually, or President Jermaine, may I speak just professionally? A little bit different. I am a pediatric nurse by trade. And I would just challenge back, I mean, that truly is a liability to the district. If we have somebody with a severe allergy that would be at risk by touch or inhalation. If it is not that severe, a lot of it is just a lack of knowledge or a fear of how bad a reaction may become. But to Tony's comment, we do need to have that actually documented. If that's the case and that student or that family is concerned, they need to bring that to the district. But if it's truly a they must ingest it type of allergy, being around it is not going to cause the same type of reaction. So that level of allergy and reaction needs to be clarified and quantified by a medical professional. And then that information needs to come to the district. So I would be hard pressed to think that the district is not upholding protection for a student with a known severe allergy. So again, I have to kind of push that back if you know who this individual is to make sure that they're getting whatever they need to have documented and protected appropriately.
Or honestly, just have them come talk to me. I mean, my office is open all the time. If I'm not there, just have them leave a message, and I can figure out. So, like I said, I'm open ears. I want to get as much information as possible, and I want to help out the very best I can. So, if there's something that we can do to help make it better, then I will definitely do my best.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I know I sounded really pushy there for a second.
Oh, it's okay. That's
Thanks,
fine.
Tony. And I noticed you have your contact information in your presentation in case any of us need to get a hold of you.
And it's also on the Swartz Creek website, so.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
All right.
Thanks for being here tonight. We really appreciate it.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
All right. Okay, moving on, we have an update on our transportation plan.
Thank you. I'm going to pass out a communication that I sent to families today. Pass this around. Mr. Melke talked about this a little bit already from our building and site meeting. We kind of ran this by them and just kind of gave a little heads up. This is a real issue, and so there's a tremendous national bus driver shortage. If you talk even to MTA or any of the local private companies, there are not drivers. There's not people that are qualified or willing to drive, and so we're not immune to that, and we've seen this issue exacerbated through the pandemic. So I want to talk about a couple things that we really have to clarify and that we're doing, and you have the communication in front of you, and it's It's also was sent out an email as well. The first thing is, one of the challenges we have with getting drivers is that they'll communicate that they don't like the behavior of some of the students on the bus, right? So, if a student's throwing things or they're behaving certain ways, and we just have to look at that and say, we don't have the ability to tolerate misbehavior. And before I go into that in depth, I want to just say that transportation, for those that may not know, is not a requirement of a public education. So we are not required to transport any students. It's a service that this board and this district have chosen to do, and we absolutely believe it's a fundamental thing for us to be able to offer all of our students an equitable education. So this is not a situation where I'm saying we don't want to offer it, but I'm trying to help paint the picture that if you are conducting yourself in a way on a bus that is going to put someone else in danger, or you are going to impede upon the driver's ability to drive a safe route, you will not be allowed to ride anymore. And so our principals met with our bus drivers and really had a great meeting talking about bus expectations and really kind of getting a consistent framework for how they're going to handle that. And it's going to be tough. So they're going to be cracking down on bus behavior. And that's something that we're taking very seriously. But it might come that somebody gets told, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to ride the bus anymore, and you'll have to find a way to get to school because you're putting the driver or other students in harm's way. Another issue that is a big deal is how are we actually recruiting for drivers? And so we released a package recently, and I believe we offer one of the best packages in the county, if not the best. So as of right now, we are paying for all training and certification. So if a driver says, I'm willing to drive a bus, but I don't have any background or experience, we provide all the training in-house. We provide the payment for the time that they're training, and we also provide the payment for the testing that they would have to go through to get certified to drive. So all that in is, it can be expensive to an individual, and we take care of that. In addition to that, we offer a $2,000 signing bonus for any new drivers. So if you come to drive for us, you're going to get $1,000 on your first paycheck, and as soon as you've driven for 90 days, you'll get another $1,000. And that's an offer that is a great option for people. One of the other things that we do is that our drivers are paid through the district, and so there's an opportunity for a pension and retirement system. We're actually asking our employees, we have an employee referral plan right now, so if one of our employees recommends a driver, there is a $500 referral bonus for those individuals. And we also are going to start offering a $100 route incentive, which means if you show up and you drive all your routes on a given week, you get an extra $100 that week. And so all of those things combined, you're going to put your hourly wage around $24 an hour, which is a very, very good rate and competitive rate. And so we are trying to attract new drivers. We're trying to get them to come through the door. So if anyone in the community has a line on somebody, please send them our way. Obviously we're going to do everything in our power to make sure that the people who are coming to us are safe and they can drive well. So, but just a quick note on how we're looking to recruit drivers, and I actually have hard copies to pass out, so if you guys want to take them and you're at Kroger and you talk to somebody that says, hey, I'm interested, pull this out of your purse or pocket and pass it along.
And can I ask you a question on that before you go?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, talk about it.
Just on the recruitment piece. What are hours for bus drivers, and do you have an option that they could be a morning only or an afternoon only?
I think at this point we would work with anybody to figure that out. We don't currently have drivers that do just one or the other, so the typical pattern is you're going to drive in the morning. You're typically going to be driving from 6:30 to 8:30 is kind of your morning runs, and then you're probably going to be riding from 2:30 to 4:30 or your afternoon runs essentially. So that's a ballpark, within that. Some people, the challenge of it, of course, well, it's good money and that there's a gap in the day, but a lot of times what we've found is that people who are retirees or, have that situation at home, this creates a real unique opportunity for them. So there were some good comments that came out of our building and site committee about even working with some of our local faith institutions and churches and things like that to try and, drum up some support. So we're trying to get the word out. We've put signs up. We've been marketing for the last 4 years, but we're now upping, the ante. We're offering more incentives. We're offering, pretty high rate. So we hope that we can attract some people to come drive for our kids.
Can I just say as well, the paid training part, for those who don't know, the training is quite expensive. I have my CDL Class A, and personally out of pocket for 1 week of training and a test cost me around $2,000 out of pocket. And that's 1 week. Some people, if you have no experience, if you have no idea, you're just kind of doing it because, hey, this is a good deal. Listen, it could take a month of training. And that right there, that could be upwards of $8,000 to $10,000 worth of training. So for those who don't understand, look, this is a great deal. If you know anybody, please help out with this because, we're offering quite a bit here to get these drivers.
I appreciate that, and absolutely, it's a pretty big investment, but we feel how important it is to get our kids to school. It's not something that we want to see go by the wayside. So that kind of leads into the big change, and that is in our routes. And so to give you a little bit of a background on this, as the shortage has been hitting different school districts are canceling entire routes. I'll tell you about a large district to the west of us that in the state of Michigan that normally runs 82 bus routes, and they are now driving 26. So you're talking about 2/3 of your routes that you used to run are just literally not running anymore. So whole swaths of districts are not being transported. In this county and neighboring counties, we have districts that are announcing sections of their district that will no longer be transported. We have districts that are making changes every single day. So today the blue circle's riding with orange triangle, and you're trying to figure out the, major complex situation every day. And then another thing districts are doing is they're saying, well, we'll take this group of kids for 2 weeks, and then we'll transport the other group, for the next 2 weeks, and they're going 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So we've met and we tried to brainstorm because we're in very similar situations, and we said, how can we come up with a plan where we still transport our students, but and we don't have to cut off whole sections of our district, but we do so, with some changes, and we do it in a way that people can understand. So we've thought that the simplest way is to operate on a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. I'm going to just go through those briefly. Basically, plan A is when we have a full force of drivers. We have everybody in place, and nobody has to go on an extended run. The runs are going to be shorter. The buses are going to be less crowded. Having buses is not an issue. Having the drivers is the issue. And so the more drivers we can get, the more we can put on the road. And so plan A is that. Plan B, which is where we're currently at, is when we're down several drivers and need to pick up more students, and therefore the bus rides are going to be a little bit longer, and the buses are going to be a little bit more crowded. We are seeing more students coming to ride the bus now. I think parents are becoming more comfortable sending their kids on the bus, and so we're picking up kids. Well, if we're picking up kids and we're losing drivers, that's not a good formula. And so we need drivers, as we've already stated. Plan C is when it gets significantly more painful. So Plan C is where now we're going to have to make some significant changes. Primarily, the changes would be we move an enforceable walking distance at the high school and middle school to 1.5 miles instead of 1 mile. So somebody who may be normally in Plan A or B picked up might have to find a way to get themselves to school or to walk to school. And then the other big change would be if we are on a long route and you are the only stop, for 1.5 miles, and the bus has to go that far out of their way, you may have to actually get yourself to a bus stop, the closest stop, and then we'll pick you up on when we're en route. I do want to show, for the sake of the board and the community, when you go to our website, you're going to see this pop-up, and it says, keep up on daily transportation changes. And our transportation changes are shown every day. If you go over to district and you go down to transportation and daily bus changes, you'll notice, look at what it says. Here are the changes for today. Afternoon status, we're in Plan B. So if you're saying, okay, we're in Plan B, we know what that is. So if you have an address that you look at and you say, well, what are Plan B maps? You click right over here and you say, okay, I'm a high school student. I want to look at the Plan B map. I can find out exactly where the driver goes, and I locate my address, and I can tell you exactly where I'm supposed to be in Plan B. So this site is ready to go. It's updated. If we're in Plan A, okay, I'm going to look at a little bit of a different one. So if I pull this one up, this is Plan A, and I'm going to see a slightly different route because there's more runs that are going to be given at that time. In addition to those maps that you can pull up, there are going to be all sorts of updates, and this is done real time throughout the day. So athletics has middle school volleyball to Kersley, and they're going to ride with Jim and bus 27 at 2:20. So all of this is up to date, real time. So how do we get people to this site? That's the question. So one of the things that we've put together is this right here, which is a QR code document. And just so you know, this is going to be coming out in like a 3-inch by 4-inch little, 2-inch by 4-inch business card size little document, and that's going to go home with all the students. We actually just ordered the other day, we are getting magnets made, and the bus drivers are going to be passing these out to all of the current bus riders. So the magnet can be placed on the refrigerator of the student at the house, and so in the morning, the student or the parent can simply put their phone up and they can find out exactly, it'll take them right to that page, and it'll tell them, we're in Plan A today, we're in Plan B today, we're in Plan C today, and especially if we're in Plan C and there are some more significant changes to your route, you'll be able to see that immediately. So I have absolutely no doubt that we need to find more drivers. That's going to be a major part of solving this challenge. However, I am proud of our team that they were able to come up with a plan that still transports all of our students. There is going to be some pain associated with this, but we're still offering transportation to all of our kids that need it, and trying to be as organized as possible. So want to make sure, get that out there to you. You can see the information that went out today, and then if you have questions, I'm here to answer.
Will this still be, so I'm pulling up my own notifications, and I don't know if that's by your address or how, but I still receive notifications by text that certain buses have changed. Will that still transpire? Is that still an option?
Yeah, so actually in my memo that I sent out to parents today, we use our school messenger, and we will send out text message if you're signed up. So again, we don't want anybody to have to say, you never told me there was a change, right? So you're going to get a text message. If you go to this if you go to this site, you're going to see it. You're going to get an email. There's lots of ways to stay informed, and so we're trying to remove all barriers of communication as it relates to this, because we know it can be a challenge. If you're two working parents at home and you're leaving early in the morning, you need to know, hey, there was a change. I got to make different arrangements.
Yeah. And actually, the QR code was texted out as well.
Yep. Any other questions about transportation?
I like that you've included the driver's name, so that if the family's not really sure where you listed was their route, they actually have a driver to look at. That's really cool.
Yeah. They're doing a nice job. They're trying to stay organized.
Any other questions for Ben or comments?
Yeah, I don't think you mentioned the
I
bus
didn't,
route.
and I appreciate Chucky bringing that up. So Yeah, so in the building and site meeting, and just Chuck mentioned to me, we have posted for some temporary positions, and they're called bus marshals. So we're actually looking at having these individuals ride on the buses to help with COVID compliance, putting masks on, making sure that the kids are behaving themselves, not standing up, and they're going to sit on the buses, and they're going to actually roam between buses, almost that's where the marshal name comes from. So they're going to actually ride with the bus drivers. That got a lot of really positive feedback from our current drivers because, you know, it's a hard job when you've got 60 kids possibly and your back is to them. You know, it can create a real situation. So having the bus marshals, I think, is going to be another way that we help attract drivers and retain our current ones. So I think I appreciate you bringing that up.
Those are paid positions, Ben?
They are.
Do we have option for volunteer for that at all?
I would think that we would. We would welcome any human being who's a quality individual to be a bus marshal.
Well, I guess I mean, I do question, especially at like the elementary level, would our like NHS students qualify to sit on a bus and ride around for 2 hours, but to essentially play babysitter and be marshals, if that's appropriate or not? Just a suggestion.
Well, thanks, Ben, to you and RC and everybody who's been working so diligently on this. And we all have our walking papers.
Yes.
Take this to the store with you.
That's right.
And make sure that you are asking people if they'd like to drive a bus.
Or Thanksgiving dinner when somebody comes in unemployed. There you go.
I did see a brief story yesterday on one of the news shows, Hemlock Schools, and they were allowing people to test drive buses to see if they would be interested or comfortable to pursue the license or the certification.
Wow.
I want to try it. They were actually out in the parking lot driving around.
Wow. Yeah, there's some superintendents that are driving a bus now, so maybe I should start taking the training.
It's a good gig. So let's move on to the ESSER 3 draft spending plan.
All right, so I'm going to, we've talked about this in a few different types of meetings, and as I said before, I want to make sure that you all have kind of an understanding of what this is. And so we, through the American CARES Act, the American Rescue Plan, the ESSER 3, there's a lot of different names for these public acts, but these are federal dollars. These are federal grant funds that have come out in some of the more recent American Rescue Plan was signed into law a few months ago. And so, as we've reported, the school district's going to receive about $4.5 million of these ESSER 3 funds, $4,576,127 to be exact. And those funds have to be spent on one of 15 to 16 areas, depending on how you quantify it. But I've given you the allowable usage areas for ESSER 3 funds. And so, you know, as you can see, there's some that are going to be more specific around the SCEA Act of 1965, the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. These are basically very common things that we deal with, but any activity authorized under those acts, which address students typically that are disadvantaged or are high need. But if you get into number 2 and beyond, you can start to see, you know, coordination and preparedness of response efforts of local educational agencies, you know, to prepare for and respond to coronavirus, essentially. So what we've been through the last few years, anything we come up with that would be allowable. Providing principals and school leaders with the resources necessary to address the needs of their individual schools. That's a big catch-all. There's a few catch-alls in there where, you know, we kind of look to that. But we have to be able to tie back any of the proposed funding areas to a draft plan. I also want to let you know that coming out this week, I'll be sending out a stakeholder input survey. And actually, Elena and I talked about this week, and the students will also be getting this survey. And so I'm going to pass it out to you now so that copy of it. It's a very short survey. But basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to say, all right, we have this $4.5 million of federal funds. It can't just be spent on anything. It has to be spent in very specific ways. But we want to get input from stakeholders. So this obviously allows for a community member, a parent, a teacher, a school administrator, a student, to provide us with some areas that they feel are important and then provide feedback. So this is going to be distributed starting this week, and we're going to start to look at some of the input that we have gotten from them. We have had several focus groups meeting about this already for the last couple months, and they're staff groups, so we do have some staff input. And so a lot of the staff that were included put forth some preliminary ideas, and the board in this room has put forth some preliminary ideas on ways that we may be able to spend the money. So what I've done is I've provided in this document right here, I'm going to give you a hard copy. These are the ESSER 3 draft. This is a draft of a potential spending plan. And so our application is going to look very different. Obviously, when we talk about the application for ESSER 3, that's something that I'd have you vote on and approve as a board. But what we're looking at right now is just a real rough draft and kind of giving you some ideas. So I was just going to go through here, and for the purpose of your discussion today, what I was thinking I would do is I would explain, what the item is, why it was brought up, and then certainly we have some general baseline costs associated with that, and then we can kind of work through that. What I will say is this is a wish list. We have about $5.3 million there. Of course, that's $757,000 more than we were going to have to spend. So we're going to have to, when we do the application, make requests for the full $4.5 million. And we'll be prepared to do that. And as you can see already on just this one wish list, we have over 5.3 million. So that won't be a problem. But I'm going to go through kind of quickly just to kind of give you the rationale. And these came from the staff. So one of the areas that is an allowable infrastructure cost purchase, and we've done some of this already with ESSER 2, are air quality equipment and HVAC equipment. And so there's still work to be done in that area, and we believe that there's probably another $750,000 to $850,000 that could be spent to address some of those infrastructure issues. One of the big things that came out of some of our stakeholder groups, and we've had, Mr. Brown has been fantastic with Luna. We've really seen a need for some therapy animals across the district, and so that certainly would meet some of the social emotional needs from the grant. And so what we estimate is about $3,000 for the animal itself. The vet training is probably about $15,000. The dog training is probably a $15,000 price tag, and then they're going to have some preliminary vet bills and shots and things like that. But as you think about the reason that there's a number 7 there is that we have 7 school buildings. So we had 5 elementary schools, a middle school, high school. You were probably looking at 7 animals. And so that comes with a lot of additional things, right? We'd have to have people, staff members that would be willing to participate in the program. But essentially what we'd be saying is we would provide the therapy animal and the training. You would have to, provide the willingness to care for the animal and make it a part of your family. I think we had conversations about ongoing costs for food and things like that, and there's probably like an annual stipend that somebody would get for something like that. We also talked about windows and doors. That's an allowable infrastructure purchase, and so we've identified a lot of areas that we could use that fund. Throwing out about $150,000 for replacing old doors and windows that were not being done with the bond itself. We talked about staff wellness rooms at all the buildings for helping to provide social emotional support for staff and a place for them to make work feel more like home. We have currently launched our medical liaisons. Those are about $20,000 price tag for our people who are doing a lot of our they're called health and safety liaisons. We have 4 of those individuals. We've had conversations at Building and Site, and I know Mr. Melke's talked about the thermal scanning technology, rough ballpark of about 25 of those. We also know that one of the infrastructure costs is hard surface flooring. We can replace carpet with hard surfaces. We had the suggestion for flexible classroom furniture and seating. That's one area that the district has a long way to go in terms of understanding the kinesthetic movement of learners, and our classroom furniture a lot of times are just a simple chair attached to a desk, and so there may be a need to say, let's look at, updating some of that with more flexible furniture. The biggest price tag item is this concept, and a lot of the people really like this idea of adjusting, extending the school day, and that's by adding additional learning time. So that could be something where we say, you know what, we're gonna either extend the school day for certain people. We could do targeted tutoring and support, so we have groups of students that are further behind. We could give them more instruction in the day, and of course, it's going to take staff to be able to do that, which is a large cost. There's literacy and math curriculum materials. Those are certainly allowable under the grant. We've had the suggestion of improving positivity project district-wide, and so looking at site licenses for multiple years. We've also had the conversation about getting a school nurse or a school medical officer. There's a price tag obviously associated with that. When you see the quantity of 2, that means that we can expense, at least from these funds, through this school year and next school year. So you can go through 2023. So the idea would be, obviously you're looking at those positions for 2 years. Several of the staff members have talked about at the elementary level getting Clever Touch and smart boards, and so those are instructional devices that allow for the teachers to be able to instruct in an interactive digital display. Those are certainly allowable under the grant. We've talked about medical labs throughout the buildings, outfitting some of our current spaces as medical labs. We talked about classroom libraries, improving our literacy materials. And then this board and several other staff members have continued to support the notion of our summer learning program that we had already started and did this past year. So as a result of these items, this is just a draft. You have what we're kind of thinking as a staff, and obviously it's a draft because we're going to be getting some additional ideas and feedback from our stakeholder surveys that are going to be going out. And you also have the allowable areas that the funding can be used for. So it's up for you to discuss at this time if you have further things that you'd like me to do or to add or to get cost for, analysis for, any of those types of things, or if you just have questions in general. And again, I do want to stress that we will have to apply for these funds, and the application is due on December 15th. Our preliminary plan is to bring you an actual application to approve on December 1st at our next board meeting. And when that occurs, understand that as time goes, if we notice that there are things that have changed and we need to make amendments, we do have the opportunity to open the application back up and make amendments. So we need to get an initial submission in, and then if we have changes that need to occur, we can make those adjustments. That's all I have to start. So if you have additional questions or discussion, I'm all ears.
Questions, comments for Ben? I have a question on the school nurse. I know we've talked about that. I'm just looking at the cost per item. And I'm wondering what factors into that.
Well, by the time-
Alicia probably knows better than I do what a school nurse salary is, but it's probably in the neighborhood of $50,000 to $70,000.
Depends on the job description and exactly what they're doing, but then you have to factor in benefits and everything else. I'm sure Ben can attest.
Yeah, so, we've said before, in general, if you just want to use a really round number, a general employee costs you $100,000.
Okay.
Now, somebody will say, well, what teacher makes $100,000? Well, none of our teachers currently make $100,000, but they cost the district $100,000 by the time you factor in FICA, healthcare, retirement, So, and so you just understand that it's exponential as you look at a salary. So, I believe that if you're looking at $150,000, you're probably looking at about a $70,000 to $80,000 a year salary. But you're probably then gonna have to say, okay, well, you got your retirement, your benefits, which is why those legacy costs sometimes are frowned upon in grants, because this is temporary money. And so we've had those conversations, and obviously we're gonna have to pare this list down a little bit because there's more on the list than we have even coming to us, so we'll have to make some modifications.
And I wasn't suggesting getting rid of that line item, I just was wondering what went into the dollars as you're looking to cut that 757,000 potentially. Thank you for explaining. Anybody else?
Classroom libraries, what makes that a high priority? I mean, I know it's essential to read and learn and grow with the books, but I look at the computer as kind of replacing the libraries, not completely.
Yeah.
What gives that such high priority?
So, what we've learned, and there's a lot of books that we could read together as a book study that we don't have time for, but there's a great book called The Book Whisperer. And The Book Whisperer is about how, as teachers in education, we've learned about teaching literacy instruction and maybe some things that we've done historically that have not really advanced our students' ability to love books and to read. And so years ago when this book came out, it came out about 10, 12 years ago, it really kind of changed the conversation from you probably, and when I went into school, and probably when you went to school, it was, you will read this book and you will do a book report and you will report out and everybody must read this book and tell me all about it. Well, if you didn't like that book, you were in trouble, okay? Because you had to still read that book and do the book report and so on. And so that's all fine. Most people do it and then they move forward. But it didn't necessarily inspire a passion and love of reading. So what we've started to realize is that what's more important is to say, we need to learn how to read nonfiction books. We need to learn how to read, informational text. We need to learn how to read fiction and fantasy and those types of things. And then what we're teaching kids is about how to pull different elements out of the literature, okay? And so the best way that we can do that is give kids tons and tons and tons of variety of books. So I might say, well, To Kill a Mockingbird is going to be the book that I'm going to use to teach you about a theme, okay, of, perseverance, all right? So we're going to talk about this theme. What I want you to do is you're going to pick a book that interests you, but you're going to try and pull the theme of perseverance out of your text and find a book that matches it. So what we basically know in the research, and what's amazing about helping spur on, especially adolescent learners and readers, is that they need access to a high quality and high volume number of diverse texts. So if we only say, we bought a classroom set of this one book, which is what we did 20, 30 years ago, you're missing out on the individual choice for all of those students to be able to read. Rod is an expert in this area. I don't want to take anything away. If you want to add anything to this, Mr. Heatherton?
Well, everything Ben said is spot on. I guess the only other thing that I would add is that the number of words, the number of miles on the page that you can read, more likely that student will learn to read. So if you're talking about a K-2 building, you want that child to have as many books in their hands as possible all the time. It's one of the reasons at the elementary level they'll often say, you don't have any homework tonight, but make sure you read your 20 minutes. Because there is direct correlation between the amount of texts, the amount of vocabulary words, the amount of books that a child reads and their success in school. So the more they read, the more exposure they have to different vocabulary words, the more chances they're going to be successful in school overall. And that's just at the elementary level. I'm sure the middle school and high school ELA departments would argue they need libraries just as much as those elementary teachers.
Well, both these comments make very good sense.
Yeah, just to give you an idea that we've moved away from having one place that you go to having every room, every Lashbrook's teachers' rooms, they're going to have a library of their own curated books with all different varieties of levels for their kids and all different varieties of interest for their kids, so that their kids are learning to, more importantly, just read as opposed to read what I tell you to. Thank you.
Anything else for Ben?
We talked about the Humane Society program. Would that fall under this, or would that be something separate? Is the therapy dogs in each school, is that intended to be something?
So this would be an actual, we as a district would move this forward. The Humane Society program is more of a reading program that Mr. Melke, suggested that we're very excited about, where kids can take a field trip to go to read to animals. Specifically, if you may be a reluctant reader, you have an opportunity to do those things. And so that really, the Humane Society doesn't give us we don't pay for that, right? Yes. I think you could absolutely use these funds for that, but it doesn't, there's not a big cost to it. We're essentially, they don't charge us to do it, so, we're going over there to read with the animals. There's not a large fee. The therapy dogs, there'd be quite an expense in that. We would have to purchase the animals, train the animals, make sure they have food and their vet bills taken care of. And then obviously we'd have to find somebody who would be willing to, invite that animal into their family, because that's a big commitment.
All right, Ben, thank you. Thanks for explaining this all so thoroughly, and we look forward to learning more about it and the results of the survey. Thanks. All right. Finally, we are now at our new 10A, which is approval of SCEA employment.
So I'm very excited about this. I had the opportunity to meet a very dynamic candidate who is going to be before you for your consideration this evening. We've had a music position open at Morris Elementary School for the entire school year. It's been a tough thing to find. And so I'm going to ask Mrs. Lashbrook if she would mind introducing a candidate we'd like you to consider this evening.
Good evening. I am super excited to bring forward to you Mr. Alphonse Boucle. He originally comes from Gaylord, Michigan, recently graduated from University of Michigan Flint with a major in music education, which is super exciting, and a minor in psychology. What's exciting about him is that, number one, he's music certified, and it's really hard to find somebody who is music certified and wants to work with lower L kids. It's just a different kind of music. So, but he's got a lot of energy and a great passion for all of that, so we're excited to have him. He did his student teaching at Hahn Intermediate in Davison Schools. He is a flautist, singer, actor, and all-around excellent musician. He comes with a varied background. He performed in 13 different countries, like super exciting life. So I present to you Alphonse Boucle.
Thank you, everybody. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to be here in Swartz Creek, and I'm hoping to do the best that I can and overall just show these kids the world of music and hope they fall in love with learning music, the language of music, and hoping that can bring diversity here to Swartz Creek. Awesome.
Could you tell them just a little bit of your background on musical theater and some of the places you've performed?
Yeah.
And
so,
instruments.
It's better to ask what I don't play at this point. I guess I can say that. I've traveled to over 13 countries with a nonprofit organization known as the Young Americans. Through them, I have performed in over 400 shows from age 18 to 20. Let's see. I've taught in 3 different languages, Japanese, German being the main ones, literally thousands of kids. My minor in psychology was mainly a focus in early childhood development, and I usually follow music learning theory, which is close in hand with early childhood development. So I have a lot of experience of seeing how little kids learn music and can adapt to whatever needs they may need.
Welcome, Alphonse, and I'm very excited to learn more about your involvement in Young Americans. We had Young Americans come here several years ago, and my husband and I hosted 4 of the young ladies who were
Yes.
part of that. It was amazing.
2004, I believe.
Oh, my gosh, it
Yep.
was so good.
Yep, that cast came to my hometown.
Did they?
Yep,
It
and
was
I was
so
in first
good.
grade.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's great. Any questions for Alphonse? All right, with that, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So,
Support.
second.
I hear Chuck and I hear Jessica. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, please stay with us. It'd be a good addition.
Okay, let's see. Be it resolved that Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the SCEA employment of Alphonse Boucle, specials teacher at Moorish Elementary, presented. Sue, could you do roll call, please?
Brian Sapanic,
Yes.
John Sayer,
Yes.
Jessica Lenave,
Yes.
Chuck Melkey.
Yes.
Alicia Gardner,
Absolutely.
Carrie Germain.
Yes.
6 yes.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
No obligation.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Congratulations.
You are, yes, welcome to leave. I know you have a busy day tomorrow. Good luck.
To report in the
Alphonse.
morning?
Good luck. And you as well, Tony. If you'd like to stay, you are always welcome, but you're also welcome to leave. Yes, thank you.
Oh, I wanted to say one thing before he leaves, Carrie.
Sure.
And and we've talked about this before. I'm gonna try to make it through the next food line here in the next couple weeks. So don't be surprised if you don't see me come through. A lot of the kids, talked about it at our roundtable meetings. So, and I encourage our other board members to do the same, and maybe we can have a lunch date and go through a couple times, just to see how everything's going. Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks again, Tony. All right, with that, we have the need to go into closed session for the purpose of negotiations, OMA 15.268, Section 8C, and consideration of the purchase or lease of real property, OMA 15.268, Section 8D.
So moved.
Thank you. I have a second. Brian, any comments or questions?
May we have a recess prior to?
We may. I'm going to ask Sue to do roll call, and then we will take a recess.
Carrie Germain.
Yes.
Chuck Melkey. Brian Sapanic.
Yes.
John Sayer,
Yes.
Jessica Lenave.
Yes.
Alicia Gardner.
Yes.
Okay, we will take a 5-minute break, and then we will reconvene in the conference room. Good? All right. We are back in open session at 9:06. We have one more action item on our agenda. That is the approval of the Mary Crapo option. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Support.
Is that John and Chuck? All right. Any comments or questions?
Just a quick clarifying statement here, and that is that this really is about, we've had a great relationship with Communities First. They had a great vision for an idea to do senior housing at Mary Crapo. Obviously, there have been a lot of difficulties in the last few years, and they've been unable to secure funding, just the grant market being very competitive. And due to several other, issues just with the way that everything, is rolled with the pandemic and their ability to get that funding, this agreement is essentially moving on, and we'll have to, at a different time, deliberate and open to discuss what we'd like to do with the Mary Crapo site. So I want to thank Communities First for their partnership and, the opportunity we've had to work with them, and we hope that maybe in different circumstances in the future, there'd be an opportunity to work with them again. And so this, the termination of the option to purchase agreement with Communities First is for your consideration this evening.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approves the Mary Crapo option as presented. Sue, could I get you to do roll call, please?
Chuck?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Alicia?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
6 yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. And thanks, Ben. You'll communicate for us. Thank you. All right. Again, one more time for public comments. We don't have anyone in the audience except for Travis, unless he wants to comment. All right. Moving on, comments and questions from the board. Anyone?
I have three. I think three. Number one, and I said it to Elena, thank you for all you did for the student roundtable. In particular, thank you for the students for trusting us and being honest and candid with their comments. I encourage the community to do that with us. As well, I wanted to congratulate and tell Mrs. Corbett she will be missed, and thank you for everything she's done so far for this district, and to congratulate Mrs. Titsworth and Nate Gatlin on their incoming responsibilities as a principal and assistant principal at the middle school. And then I also wanted to congratulate the SCF swim team for coming in third in the Flint Metro League this last weekend. They did fantastic. I know you got football and whatnot, but that's all right. It's okay.
Anyone else? Thanks, Jessica.
Just something quick. Just recognition to all of our community members, staff, families, anybody that comes from a military background. Tomorrow is our National Veterans Day, so happy Veterans Day, and thank you for your service.
And thank you as a veteran, Alicia. Thank you for your service. And anyone else, I'm not sure we have any other board members, but you and your families all sacrificed a great deal for our country. Anyone else? I would like to thank Tony Delgado for coming and addressing all of our many questions today for food service, and appreciate the work that he's doing there and his willingness to put his contact information out into the community so that he can address questions proactively. And then two things I want to remind people. If you are interested in getting a vaccine, a COVID vaccine for your child, you can get it at pharmacies, you can get it at the health department. And then also, if you know someone who is interested in becoming a bus driver, please encourage them to contact Mr. Meinke. And we really, really do want to make sure that our children have transportation to school. And I also want to thank Ben and others in RC for putting the transportation plan together very proactively so that we are not that school that's unable to pick up children. So thank you. Anything else? All right, with that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Alicia, Jessica, any comments or questions? Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourning at 9:11. Thank you, everybody. Have a good month.